This video is going to show you Grandmaster Nightfall getting Platinum rank this week on an Arc 3.0 Warlock. Reason for that is there's a lot of Warlock mains out there confused on what Arc 3.0 builds you can use, especially for solo content in Grandmasters. There's plenty of them. The problem is that most of them don't work very well. But this is one build that does. It relies around your grenade, having that up quite a bit and improving its damage. So we're using the exotic helmet Verity's Brow, which basically, as I said, buffs your grenade damage and the ability recharge rate of it, which I'll explain in a minute what that does. I'm using the exploit on the Warsat. I've explained it in the previous couple of videos how that works. If you're unsure, just ask. But obviously I'm just doing that. So the in-game description is quite bad on how the fourth magic perk works on this helmet. So it states this: weapon kills with a matching subclass element grant stacks of death throws. Now this is from light.gg. Each stack of death throws, which is the name of the buff, grants 50% additional base grenade recharge rate and 20% increased grenade damage per stack. Right, that's per stack. So max stacks are 5 and it lasts for 11 seconds, the buff. So how do you use this helmet in solo play? Well, just take note, that's 20% damage bonus to your grenade per stack. So at times 5 stacks, you're getting 100% damage bonus to your grenade. That's insane, because the pulse grenade on Arc 3.0 is very good. If they do ever nerf storm grenades, which is common, it's definitely coming because of what's going on PC. Or they might just nerf it that way, but I think they're just going to overall rework it, I imagine. But when that happens, which it will, pulse grenade will be king. Ease of use, lasts a long time, good damage output. Right, so you can obviously buff that with this helmet. Now, when you're dealing with the champs, deal with the barrier first, because the barrier is going to tether the overlords, which you don't want to deal with the overlords. So deal with the barrier first. Loadout, you saw at the start of the video, we're using an arc bow, Arsenic Bite, a 600 RPM auto rifle called Scathelocke with Osmosis, which means when you do throw your grenade and you've got that equipped, you take advantage. You actually have an arc auto rifle, which means if you get a kill with that, it will proc death throws, which is why I put it on. Not only that, Scathelocke is a fantastic weapon. It's as I said, 600 RPM. I see a lot of people using duty bound, and I think the main reason why is just because it's got an adept version. Just because it's got an adept tag doesn't mean it's like the best 600 RPM in the game. Definitely not. Scathelocke outclasses that gun far exceeds its stats. Its base stats are far better. I've actually looked at it. Reload range is a big one on auto rifles. This Scathelocke I've got outclasses some of my duty bounds far by range, and range is what you need on auto rifles, especially in GMs and stuff. So this first room, we're going to take out some of the exploder shanks. I overcommitted a little bit here because I got sniped, so try to not do that and just get into this corridor room, because this is your safe-ish place. Then we're going to focus on the invisible marauders, which they will push independently after so long. You want to wait for that first. We're going to blind them with the arc linear Queenbreaker, if you saw that. There'll be more opportunities for me to show you this capability. So this linear has the ability to blind an enemy on hit. Not kill, hit. This is like Wendigo, but it's an arc linear rather than a grenade launcher. Or it's like blinding grenades in a sense, but not as powerful, because it will only blind that target, not the surrounding enemies. So it's nowhere near as good that way, but it's got a little bit of utility. For most people, just use Storm Chaser, right? I understand that you don't want to use this weapon and you would want to use Storm Chaser. I understand that. Go ahead and use it. The only reason why I'm not using it is because I've already used it in this GM. It's boring to me to use it again. I always like to swap my loadouts constantly, because if there's no interest in the video, I don't make the video. I'm very tough on myself that way. Like, so I won't do like 3 subclasses same weapon loadout on each one, unless the run is really strict. I won't. So there's no interest for me for the video if I just do Storm Chaser, Arsenic Bite, standard auto rifle. It's not. It's boring to me. Although the run will be quicker. What you need to understand is when you're running unoptimized loadouts, the run just gets longer and longer and longer. Right, but we're not in the speedrunning category. This is not. I'm not. Just to remind people, I don't speedrun GMs. I'm not in the category of speedrunning them. And when I talk about speedrunning them, I'm on about when you actively go for world records and upload to speedrun.com. If you didn't know, the top elite players upload to speedrun.com to compete for world record times. This isn't just for Grandmasters. This is for story missions and the likes and the campaign. Like people go for that stuff. Just realise I'm not in that category of content. I've moved away from that a long time ago. I used to do that stuff. I don't now. So obviously my niche is the fact that I use loadouts that I see that no one uses. It piques my interest. It sometimes piques other people's interest, and sometimes every now and then I discover a gem, and I have done it in the past. As I say with Queenbreaker, I wouldn't say it's like an absolute gem because it's technically a worse version of a legendary arc linear, so I understand that. But it's still decent nonetheless. It's a very fun weapon to use. Its combat sight's amazing. The sound of it's amazing. And why not just have fun in a cute arc burn GM? Don't take yourself too seriously. It is Fallen Saber. There's not really much difficulty with this. Any loadout would work, but different loadouts will differ the time, as I've said. Yeah? So we're going to activate this vent, but we're going to shoot the vent from back here. Why is that? Well, because we can spawn kill some adds whilst multitasking the Explorer Shanks. The Explorer Shanks have a chance at wiping you, so be careful. So I think it's 3 to 4 shots on the fuse, so we'll do that. Once the fuse explodes, you want to immediately turn around and get a grenade on the spawn of Fallen coming out of that door you just saw. Then immediately do a rift for safety. Plus your arc soul's going to wreck these Explorer Shanks, which is good. Then we'll deal with the 2 orange bar snipers at the back of the map. Right, and then we can deal with the overlords. So to talk about super usage, right, because it's kind of interesting. I'm not using Chaos Reach. Why am I not using Chaos Reach? Well, because base Chaos Reach isn't that good anyways. It's only pretty decent once you invest an exotic into it. Geomag stabilizes. And the problem with that is, that's good and all, but the neutral gameplay is terrible on an Arc 3.0 Warlock with Geomag. Because, yeah, the super's amazing, but that's all that is amazing about it. So we went with the Stormtrance anyways, because there's a lot of instances where Roman Super is beneficial in this particular Grandmaster. I've already mentioned this before. And it turns out it's alright, but it's still not doing enough damage. That's why it's called Tickle Fingers, isn't it? Always has been. It was the same in D1. I don't know why we're still like 6 years on, 7 years on, and we're still at this stage where, right, Stormtrance still isn't doing the damage in PvE. Hello, can someone buff it? There is an exotic chest plate that's very interesting called Storm Dancer's Brace, which amplifies the damage massively. It takes too much of a setup, not that great. But it is doing massive damage with Storm Dancer's Brace if you use it. Something to consider. It does actually more than Curse Reach, I believe. The Storm Dancer's Brace. I actually did a test on it ages ago. The amount of damage it does, but you need everything to line up perfectly. Kills need to be lined up at the exact right time. Then you need to immediately start supering a boss. So it's positioning and all sorts. It's too niche of an exotic. They need to rework how that works, and then people will start to use Stormtrance. So with the Orb Section, I've explained this multiple times. I count 7 seconds from the right side arc wave, and then follow that. That's my timing. Then I do a pulse grenade at this intersection. It's key that you do that. Wait in middle and then swoop over to left, sorry. And then that's how you dunk the orb safely. But your timing needs to be on point with that. You can't have any hesitation, no sprint locking going on. Make sure you're doing the sliding. You can be amplified and do the amplified technique. I don't like doing it because you're too fast. Like the arc waves, they have a speed. So if you're going too fast, I feel as though you go too fast with amplified and it kills you. so I don't like doing that, but it is something you can do. So with this room, we're going to try to hurry up because you're timed. There is an Overlord champion available, but there's a barrier that's going to be coming shortly. It's based on a timer. So we're going to quickly take out one of the Overlords before that happens. If you do that little bit of optimization, when the barrier comes out, things are a little bit easier for you. Because the barrier will obviously tether the Overlord, but the Overlord's dead, so you can't. Now a Roman Super again. This is just showing you how useful it is. Generally people struggle on this bit. It's like, I can't shoot the barrier because I'm getting sniped and the snipers are tethered. No big deal, just use a Roman Super, look. It clears out all the ads. Now it's just us and the champs. But the champs aren't a problem once all the ads are down. You'll get a couple of wretches for every champ. For every... They're on a timer, so it seems, the wretches. 3 wretches every 20 to 30 seconds, I think. So I would recommend at this point to take out... Well, it depends. If an Overlord pushes you like this, then take the Overlord. But don't take out the barrier, obviously, until it's safe to do so. Queenbreaker's putting out decent damage. Bear in mind, it is buffed by acute arc burn. Right, so that's making it look better than what it is. In my eyes, it should actually do the damage it's doing now, but without acute burn. So 25%. Buff Queenbreaker by maybe 30%. Buff it by 30%, people start to use it. There should definitely be a reason to use an exotic linear fusion rifle over a standard legendary one. Despite you having a God Roll legendary linear, unpopular opinion, yes, but Sleeper Simulant, Queenbreaker, the Queenbreaker, sorry, used to be called Queenbreaker Boar in D1. Those two should overshadow legendary linears. Now, they probably haven't come to the idea on how to do that. I would say just buff their reserves, buff damage. 2 things. Pretty straightforward. Now, you can buff them too much, but sometimes you've got to overtune something to see where that goes and then tune it back. Just give them big buffs. Or, you know, I don't want them to make linears not usable again. Like, I know everyone's using them at the minute, but there was a time when we didn't. And linears were terrible. They were a meme of a weapon. I don't want that either. But I think the first step is to buff the exotic versions and go from there. So we start with a grenade. That's important to try and get as much tick damage in on the ads and the champ before the champ tethers all the enemies. We're going to attempt to take the barrier from obviously back here. Once we get shield break, we're going to whip out Queenbreaker and do as much damage as possible. Look how good that shield break is there with Scathelocke. Look how good that. Now, if that was with duty bound, that ain't breaking that shield as good as that. Not on my platform at the very least. Plus, it's got no damage buffs, apart from Osmosis when I proc it. So, it's a really good GM weapon, this Scathelocke, and I've used it for ages. I might have used it for more than 12 months. I've had it for a year or so. But yeah, as I say, fantastic weapon. Better than the Scouts. Well, it really depends on the GM. Like something like Lightblade, like I done the other day there. The Scout was obviously the better option because you're playing from a range for most of the Nightfall, apart from when you get to the boss. So it just depends on what you're using and stuff. So now that the barrier's down, you need to take out all the enemies, including the sniper and stuff. Be sure to try and spam your bow as much as possible on ads, because what you don't realise happening is you are overloading all enemies in the game, not just champions, because Overload has a dual wielded perk. It overloads champs, but it also lowers combatant output damage, and you can see if an enemy is overloaded by an aura on them. It will actually indicate, show you that they're like sort of glowing red a little bit. That's when you know a combatant's doing less damage. So if you can do that against a sniper, guess what? You can tank more sniper shots because of that. So you should always be using the bow really for ag clear for most of the time. The barrier weapon is just for barriers really. Look, just look at the damage there. So that was this bow's explosive head. I've got Dragonfly on here. I've also got Explosive Head Rampage roll. But the fact that you can continually stun 3 champions grouped up, that's because of Explosive Head. Without Explosive Head, that wouldn't be happening. Right, I wouldn't have been able to do it, be able to do what I've just done. Heavy's low, we're now getting to the boss fight. So this is going to be the most interesting part of the run, I think. On seeing what damage Stormtrance does. Now bear in mind, this is solo in a Grandmaster. So it isn't the best possible light to showcase a super off, right? But I'm still obviously going to use it on the boss because they actually intrinsically changed Stormtrance to have landfall. Now the landfall's part of the super is very good. Right, that does massive damage. I'm happy with what that does. It's the electrified damage after that that isn't doing enough. But that should be flat buffed. Again, just go with it all. Like, you don't have to complicate it when you're managing this game. Something's not strong enough, just make the number higher. It really is as simple as that, and people will start to use it. Because that's why people don't. Because there's not much point to really use an Arc 3.0 on a Warlock. You may as well just go solar. Obviously, I've tried to stay away from it because the theme of the season I stick with. Until the latter end of the season, I start to go on other classes. But for the most part, I'll stick with the season. So it's Arc this season, so I've been sticking to it. Despite knowing that Voidwalker, Stasis, Solar are all far superior to Arc. I know that, but it's just the nature of the videos and content on YouTube, so you just need to understand that bit. So we're just going to get this server to finish, but I don't know where he's going. He's going too far away, because I want to get to my safe place first. So with boss damage, obviously I'm sure that you know, but this is the safe place to stand for damage on the boss. It's not entirely safe. The boss can actually come over here, and yes, this boss has a stomp. Obviously he hasn't got feet, but they still stomp, right? So it's still something that it's an area effect attack that you need to be careful of. So don't go too close to the boss, because the boss will one shot. Not in a super though. I'm going to super the boss now, showcase it off with landfall and stuff. Just until the boss, I'm trying to see if the boss will loop all the way right. He has. Use a bit of landfall. Massive damage. You see the damage there, just really good, just for the initial pop of the super, really good. And after that, obviously tails off to be quite low. That gets the boss immune. Obviously on phase 1 the boss is a sniper. Phase 2 void. Phase 2 and 3 void. Phase 1 and 2 solo sniper. Phase 3 void. And then phase 4 the arc. But phase 1 and 2 are dangerous because the boss can actively snipe you while the boss is immune. So you need to don't look at the boss ever on this phase. Right, we're going to farm up super because it was fun using the super on the boss. So we're going to farm it up again. If you don't know what I'm doing, basically what I'm doing is taking advantage of the intellect rework that happened last year. I think it was. I think it's been 12 months, might be. Maybe less than that. Basically, your bullets, your intellect is tied to bullets, but only for mainly ultras. It's noticeable on ultras and bosses. So if you shoot a boss, or a champion, or an ultra, or a yellow bar, etc., you're going to get increased intellect. On red bars, it's not quite the same. You're still getting obviously plenty of super off them, yeah, but it's different when you're shooting a tanky target. So just look at my super bar. So you can manipulate barrier champions, or any type of champion you can think of, for super regen. For super regeneration. And I've only just used my super, I'm going to get it back, I'm halfway. So you can see how effective this can be. Now this can be incorporated to all classes. Say for example you're on Tether, you want a Tether for phase 2, because you're not comfortable with this GM, but you want to make sure you get your damage in and save on heavy. You can just mess around with this barrier, you're free and safe to do it. So it works for all classes. That's why I never spec intellect in PvE. Those days have gone. Make sure that you're not speccing for intellect in PvE. Right? Intellect is sort of a stat now that you don't spec at all. I guess you would spec for PvP. But for PvE, you don't need it. You spec and discipline. Grenades now are the strongest stat in the game. And resilience, of course. Resilience, grenades, recovery. The rest of the stats are meaningless unless you're on like a hunter with mobility. Strength doesn't matter so much. Really depends on what you're doing. Strength can be handy on some things though. But for the most part, what I've just said is applied to 90% of the classes. So now we're on phase 2. I'm going to do a bit of linear damage. The boss has crit spots, so the linear is doing decent. Going to use super. This will then commit damage, so the boss goes immune. We're trying to actually get some of the shanks as well whilst doing damage. Boss is now went into void mode. Then it's obviously back to killing barriers. So this time we're not going to farm super because we won't need to for phase 3. Phase 3 is a slower pace. So it's a case of we're just going to clear out the exploder shanks, and there's 2 snipers. 2 snipers exploder shank. You must get those because they are key targets. Once you get that, it's fine. Because the barrier could possibly tether the snipers, and that creates a bit of a problem to you because you've got a tethered sniper that you can't do anything about. You pop super. What do? Well, you've got to confront the barrier. You must do. Get a shield break, and then you can clear out the snipers if that happens. Since the boss has now went into immune mode, you can actually free roam the map on this phase because the boss transitioned into the void phase, right? So you're safe. You can take the barrier from wherever you want. This is a time to get ammo and stuff like that. I would have plenty of ammo. Obviously, if you're using Storm Chaser or Pitch Glass, the strat still applies. Make sure you got plenty of ammo for phase 4 because that's when you need it. 5 to 10 shots. Because obviously with Queenbreaker, I would need to use a little bit more because it does a little bit less damage than what those do. But I've accounted for that by using high energy fire, which is a 20% damage bonus. So it's going to simulate sort of similar to what a badly rolled Storm Chaser would be with no high energy fire, or a badly rolled precision frame arc linear. So I'm sort of simulating, I'm making up for the loss of damage. But stuff like this makes you a better player. This is why I've been doing stuff like this for a long time, because if you can handle stuff on not a rubbish loadout, but a worse loadout than optimal, then you bet when you run an optimal loadout, it is very easy to you. Whereas if you just always run the meta, always, you will be caught off guard when the meta changes. You won't know how to adapt. This game has went through hundreds of changes. I wouldn't like to know how many patches there's been. There's been weapon balance after weapon balance. But if you can master all weapon types, knowledge of all perks in the game, knowledge of everything, even if that knowledge doesn't matter to you now, it might matter to you in Nightfall. This is where people fall down. They think, well, all I need to know is now. You're not looking at the bigger picture. You need to look at everything across the board. If you're main in Destiny, that is. If you're not main in Destiny, you don't need to do this. But if you really, really love this game, which I do, but I'm starting to not love it as much as I did, but I still do, obviously. But if you're somebody who truly likes this game, then you may as well learn it. Why not? Are you going to sit there and not be bothered about that? Well, like I say, if you're actively watching stuff on YouTube and you're actively, this is the only game you play, you should take the time to learn it all. That includes using all classes as well. Warlock, Titan and Hunter. Make time. And people say they don't have time, make it. I make time. I'm a very busy person, but I still make the time to play all 3 and try and get all 3 classes in. You just got to make time. It's that old saying. We're charged with light here, so we've got the high energy fire, which I got an elemental well there. That's perfect because I do need it for phase 4. But the dilemma is there's still shanks up, and I want to exhaust all phases of the shanks so that we isolate the boss away from the shanks because there's no shanks left. But if we kill the Shanks, we lose charge of light. Well, how do we keep it? Well, we just jump over their heads. Let them explode. That way they die, but we keep charge of light. And that's the big thing. So, it's kind of risky, but it's kind of not as well if you know what you're doing with this room. Because it'll say summons reinforcements, but yet there's no reinforcements to happen. So, my theory with this particular Grandmaster is that they balanced it where originally, somewhere down the line, or somewhere in the past, there was meant to be infinite waves of Shanks. But at some point it got changed where there isn't. Because the text keeps coming up. Why would the text keep popping up? So obviously at some stage during development of this particular strike, it was infinite waves of Shanks, but they changed it because they have a history of doing that. So this is what is very easy. This place here means that the boss can't get you because of this pillar thing. I don't know why, but the boss can't get you. Can't fit through the gap. So this is great. So we can just spam with our linear. Boss is 15%. We're going to pop a healing rift to be safe with a pulse grenade and then pop super. Hopefully the super, despite its damage, is going to kill the boss before I die. And it just about does. But you can see that how lacking this super is for damage, but we still made it through. That was a solo GM on this. Hope you enjoy. Thank you.